Let's step off into some college basketball. We'll talk about this last question in this segment, then get into some more of it. And I may come back to college football before the end. You've got your K-Ford ratings for basketball out, and you look at the odds, courtesy of Penn Gaming and others, to win the national championship in basketball. It's a cluttered field. You've got Houston as the number one team in the K-Ford ratings for basketball. Purdue, Arizona, Tennessee, and Auburn, followed by Alabama, UConn, North Carolina, Iowa State, and BYU. How deep of a field could we be looking at this year?
I think it's as open this year, Jake, as it's been in recent years. And the NCAA tournament with college basketball, it's such a unique setup because it really is all about matchups and the chaos of just the one-off games. That's why everyone loves March Madness. That's why we call it March Madness. It's hard to really pinpoint and identify, how it's going to play out. I do think the teams that you just mentioned certainly are going to be at the forefront of those odds, have the best chance to make a run potentially in March. But there's tons of teams outside of that you didn't mention who, if you discount them, you do it at your own risk. And, Duke is a team that's got the upper end to go out and win 6 games in March. Kansas outside the top 10 right now of my power ratings. You could go on and on about teams that have a chance. There is some proven recent history here about where you need to be and kind of adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency by KenPom. So you can kind of whittle it down through that. But in any given year, teams can come out of – we just saw last year with UConn. I believe they were a 4 seed. You don't have to be a top 1, 2, 3 seed to make a deep run in the tournament. It's all about peaking at the right time and getting favorable matchups in March. But, yes, from a power rating standpoint, those teams you mentioned, they're certainly the ones that you can expect to be playing late into March and then into early April.
Kelley, when you look at the conference averages, I like what you've done here. Conference average, K-Ford rating, points per game, above or below Division I average. Big 12, comes in at 12.2. The Big 10 right behind them at 10.4, moving up the SEC 10.3. Big East and then the ACC. And, of course, we know this when you get into college basketball, you get into, as much as what you've got 33 different conferences here. It really is interesting that I think we forget how many people play Division I basketball that could get into the tournament. But let me ask you about the SEC. How deep is this league? We have those conversations down here of, is this a 7-team league to the tournament? Is it an 8-team league, 9-league team? How deep is this league in your estimation?
Yeah, the SEC is obviously the kings of the gridiron, but very good in men's basketball as well. I think you can go 7, 8, 9 deep into the tournament this year. Of course, the bubble starts getting murky. You get your bid stealers. But in terms of the best teams in the SEC, for me, it kind of starts with a top tier of grouping. Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, all very similarly power rated up there in the top 5, the top 10 in the country. So to me, that's kind of the class of the SEC, if you will. Kentucky is probably in that next kind of tier, that next grouping of teams. Texas A&M, Florida, Mississippi State right there in your backyard, Jake. Those are also some teams that from a power rating standpoint are performing at a very, very high level, a top 40 level nationally. You talk about next year, what the SEC is going to look like, both Texas and Oklahoma right now in the top 35 of my power ratings on the basketball side. So I think you can get all the way down into the middle, maybe even that third quartile of the conference where you've got resumes that put you in a position to be under consideration on Selection Sunday, because that's what the committee's looking at. And as someone who works in a conference office and oversees basketball in the Horizon League, I can speak pretty detailed on what the committee's valuing and what they don't value. When you play in a conference like the SEC or like the Big 12, where night in and night out, these games that you're playing, they're quad 1, they're quad 2 opportunities, you get rewarded by the committee for winning those games. You do not get punished for losing those games. So even if a team has collected some losses and that loss column is really piling up, if all of those losses are in quad 1 and quad 2, in the eyes of the selection committee, you actually still have a pretty good resume, and that's how you can see, 8, 9 teams from a single conference get into the tournament.
Which conference, in your estimation, are we sleeping on this year that could be, somewhat of a surprise? I mean, obviously we know about the Big 12, the 10, the SEC, the Big East, the ACC. I mean, are we looking at the, Mountain Valley Conference? Are we looking at the West Coast Conference? Are we looking at maybe a WAC? I mean, where are you looking that maybe a lot of people aren't looking?
Yeah, I think, outside the Power 6, if you will, in college basketball, that'd be your traditional Power 5 plus the Big East. For me, it's easy to go right to the Mountain West. I think the Mountain West, they might get 4 teams in the tournament this year. And, for a for a they're mid-major, high major, whatever you want to call them. They do play FBS football, of course, in the Mountain West, but typically not a basketball powerhouse that comes to mind, the Mountain West Conference. I also think the A-10 is a conference to keep an eye on with some good teams. The WCC, the West Coast Conference, usually they've got Gonzaga, and then, St. Mary's will be a strong team too. In recent years, San Francisco has made the tournament out of the WCC. Gonzaga is down this year. This is not the Gonzaga-type team that you're used to seeing from the last 25 years. So I'm not sure how much the WCC is going to be a big player come March this year, but definitely the Mountain West, the A-10, that's where you need to be looking if you're looking outside the traditional Power Six.